Hello collectors and welcome to my review of the S.H.Figuarts Broly. This figure was revealed to mixed reactions. Some call this an absolutely disgusting piece of over-designed garbage, a mess of muscles, and a pandering attempt to non-fans of the series. Something so big and massive, surely Bandai would screw this up. Looking bland in the prototype pictures, even I was a bit skeptical at first reveal. But the final product is amazing. All of the hype you've been hearing is indeed real, and there's a reason why Bluefin sold out upon it entering the US. Kick back, relax, and let's take a look to see why you should add this monster into your collection. Simply put, Broly looks stunning. Subtle shading all over the figure is greatly appreciated, and it really gives the figure a nice sense of depth. There are some minor production issues such as mold lines, but aside from quality control issues which would vary figure to figure, the mold lines are really the only noticeable issue on this guy. First, a look at Broly's head, where you can clearly see some nice green spray on Broly's hair, really nailing his look in the movies. This wasn't very noticeable on the promotional pics, but in hand, it's stunning. Moving down to his torso, you can really see the darker paint used to make his muscles really stand out. As I said, it clearly gives the figure a sense of depth to it. Of note, you can see on his necklace there are little pieces of blue translucent plastic used all over Broly for his little gems here and there. They look very nicely done in hand. A nice look at Broly's arm here, and you can see the gold paint shines really well on his gauntlets, braces, whatever you would prefer to call them. Do note, it's not on mine, but some have had quality control issues with the gold paint being just a little bit clumpy. Also, from this angle, you can see the mold lines I was telling you about earlier on Broly's chest. A look at his waist, where his belt, skirt, whatever you would prefer to call it, is very nicely done, and the shading is very well done too, to give it a nice flowing look to it. Here's a look at the legs, again, where the shading is kept up, and the blue paint application here is very nicely done. You can definitely tell Broly's legs are pretty hefty. And then as we move down Broly's legs, we come to his teeny tiny feet, where you can see the gold paint applications are, once again, up to par, and the blue translucent gems here are very nicely done. For some of you who like to nitpick about things and, well, want to know about things which may or may not detract from the look of the overall figure, do note that there are some metal parts used down here on Broly's feet, specifically for the toe hinge and for the ankle joint. Overall, he looks great, and the hype train does not stop here. Naturally, you're probably thinking, as I was for quite some time, that he doesn't move too well because they were able to capture this beefcake so well in a physical action figure format. Surely all those muscles restrict the movement, right? Well, no. Broly moves like a dream. So to start with the articulation, Broly's head is attached to his neck on a ball joint. So you're going to be able to spin Broly's head around like so. Tilt his head forward and back, as you can see here. But unfortunately, the overly spiky hair does restrict the articulation a little bit because, well, as you can see here, hits the back of his neck, like so. Now, here's something interesting. The neck joint, as you'll see here, is like the typical swivel hinge, ball joint, whatever you would prefer to call it, joint for the Figuarts line, except for it's doubled up. So it does allow Broly some very interesting range of movement for moving his head back and forth. However, there's a little bit of an issue. You see that unique construction. Every so often when you turn Broly's head around like so, that joint system comes out of alignment, and you may not necessarily get Broly to move his head forward and back, like you can see me doing here, and you may stress the joint. So just be careful when you're moving Broly's neck around so that way you don't accidentally force it when it's not aligned correctly and you break it. Because if you break it, that's going to be a pain to get a replacement for. So, aside from that interesting joint, moving down, Broly's basically your average Figuarts. You have a ball joint for the shoulder. As you can see, pretty solid range of movement. And then you have a hinge in the shoulder itself to allow you to move the shoulder up and down, or in and out, depending on how you see things. From there, Broly has a bicep swivel, as you can see here. You can spin his arm completely around, And this definitely comes in handy because if you have Broly's arm, say like this, you may not necessarily like seeing the joint there, or if you have his arm like this. So if you want to, you can just go ahead and position Broly's shoulder sculpt like so, and just spin the bicep swivel around like that. So this way you don't have to see the ugly joint, as some would like to call it. From there, we have a double hinge in the elbow. And it's pretty cool too, because on the other side, as you can see, there's an actual sculpt there instead of just a generic joint. And then from there we have the hands, which are attached to the wrists on a ball joint. But here's another interesting point for Broly. It's a literal ball joint, and it's on a peg connected into the brace on the forearm. Yeah, it's not a double axis or a barbell style, so you just have one single ball joint. So just keep that in mind when you're moving the hands around. Now, for the fists, you get a little bit of a rocking motion, and you can swivel it around, you know, typical ball joint. But for the other hands, the option parts, you get a ton of range, like so. So do keep that in mind when you use the optional hand parts, that you get a better range of movement out of those than you would the fists. However, be careful. If you notice when you open Broly up out of the package, you had a little piece of plastic on the wrists, which was there to prevent paint transfer. So when you're moving the hands around, make sure you're not rubbing them up against any gold paint, because there is the possibility of severe paint transfer. I know, I've seen it. Moving down from there, Broly's ab crunch is on a complicated ball joint hinge system. So you're going to be able to get Broly to rock his upper half of his body back like so, and you're going to be able to get a little bit of a crunch forward, and you're going to get a little bit of tilting from side to side. Now, I've tried to get a look inside the body cavity of Broly multiple times, but I can't figure out a way to pop this top part off, so I'm not exactly sure what type of joint Broly has in there. Just know that, unfortunately, that's about all the range of movement you're going to get out of that specific little ab crunch there. Now, moving down to his waist, we have a ball joint. And this is where you're going to get the most movement out of Broly's upper body. As you can see here, we have a ball joint here for the actual skin portion of Broly, so you're going to be able to get lots of twisting and turning. And then here for his belt, kilt, skirt, whatever, there's also a ball joint, which will give you just a little bit more range of movement, which is very, very nice. Now, moving down from there, the red parts here of the belt, if that's what you would prefer to call it, they are on their own ball joints by themselves. So this front flap here, you can twist it and turn it just a little bit. And then these two flaps have a joint here for this one, and here for this one. And it's basically that swivel hinge sort of joint. So you're going to be able to get just a little bit of movement, and just be careful that you know that the joints are there, so this way you don't accidentally force Broly's legs to move in one direction, and you snap it. Now, unfortunately, this back piece here is one solid sculpt piece, so you're not going to be able to get this to give at all if you want to move Broly's legs back in a way that you would need this to move. Just keep that in mind. Now, moving down from there, we have Broly's hips, which have the typical pull-down style hinge a Figuarts would have. And as usual, the legs are attached at the hips on a ball joint. So you're going to be able to get Broly's legs to move around pretty much any direction you want, since this is free to move around. And that ball joint is plugged in the upper thigh on a swivel. So independent of that ball joint, you have a swivel. From there, we have a typical double hinge joint in the knee, as you can clearly see here. Now be careful, because these hinges are rather tricky to move, and on mine they're rather tight. And the last thing you want is, come on, move, and your hand slips and you snap something off on Broly's waist. That wouldn't be very good. And then finally, moving down from there, we have Broly's ankles, which are the typical Figuarts style joint for the ankles. You have the ball hinge or double swivel combo. Pretty decent range of movement there, and you can definitely get the ankle rocker swivel out of it. As you can see, I have going on there. And then when it comes to Broly's toe, you only have one hinge. It's not a double like some of you may be thinking, and you're only going to get about that much movement up and no movement down. So as you can clearly see, even though Broly is huge, he can definitely move. So we have great looks, and we have great articulation. Surely that's all Broly has going for him, right? Nope. Broly pretty much comes with everything you would expect the legendary Super Saiyan to come with. He comes with option parts for faces, for hands, he comes with a support stand, and he comes with 3 energy effects. Pretty neat. For the support system, Broly comes with a modified version of the Tamashii Stage Act 4, and it would be modified in that the claw is significantly larger than your average Act 4 support claw. So if you need a little bit of extra support for that weird pose you want to put Broly in, this will help you out. And in the event that you should need an extra support arm, you get 2 of them in total. However, it is disappointing that we only get 2 support arms when we get 3 of these green energy orb effect parts to represent Broly's different attacks throughout the movie. And here's a quick close-up look at what those 3 orbs look like. They're translucent green plastic with this white shading here on one side, which does tend to be strong on some of them, and it is rather odd in placement, and I'm not sure exactly why they did it. I guess these are supposed to represent the eraser cannon, but you think that that would in general be just a little bit larger. And instead of just getting 3 of the same, if they would have included different sized energy blasts for Broly, but still, what we get is pretty nice. And as you can clearly see on the bottom of these orbs, we have this little teeny tiny hole. So this way we can plug the support arm into them. But if you would rather you not plug them into a support arm, we do get an alternate hand for Broly. So this way he can actually hold the energy effect, which is pretty neat. Speaking of hands, in total we get 3 sets of hands with Broly. We get the default fists, we get these sort of splayed out hands, which are sort of grasping, and we get these really splayed out hands, which make it look like he's actually firing one of those blasts. And swapping out hands is really easy to do. But again, just be careful when you're moving the hands around because you don't want to move it up against Broly's gauntlet here, and you don't want to snap off that peg system for the ball joint. So, all you have to do is just grab Broly's currently attached hand, pop it off, take your new replacement hand, and just pop it on easy, like so. Last up for Broly's accessories would be the different interchangeable faceplates. Aside from the default calm face, we get this screaming maniacal face, and we get this smirking shit-eating grin for Broly, which is very appropriate. And swapping the faceplates out, it's really easy to do. First, grab this little piece of hair right here, pop it off, grab Broly's currently attached faceplate, pop it off, find the pegs on the faceplate, and line it up with the ones down here. Slide it on like so, and then just reattach Broly's hair, and there you go. Now, some may have a fair argument that he doesn't come with too much. 3 sets of hands, 3 faceplates, 3 of the same effect part, and a display stand doesn't seem like much on paper. However, Broly is huge, the faceplates depict iconic emotions, the hands are absolutely perfect for this character, and his energy attacks in the various movies, well, they were rather generic, to be perfectly honest. Aside from 1, maybe 2 more faceplates for different emotions, another support stand, and possibly another claw for those who are not that skilled in posing their figures, this Broly figure is a complete set. In terms of sizing, Broly is massive. First off, here's Broly with the Super Robot Chogokin Getter 1 and the Robot Spirits God Gundam. Here's Broly alongside some S.H. Monster Arts figures, and just as a side note, that's the line Broly should have been released in. Moving over to the S.H.Figuarts line, here's Broly alongside some other villains from the Dragon Ball Z universe. And finally, alongside some of the Z Warriors. So as you can see, Broly is huge. If you think you have enough shelf space cleared out for him right now, may just want to clear off a tiny bit more. There is absolutely no question as to whether or not you should buy this. This figure looks absolutely amazing and is improved upon from the prototype with nice shading, stunning gold paint, and great use of translucent parts. Just be careful about possible paint transfer. The articulation is great and much better than what you would expect. He can't cross his arms over his chest like a real muscle man could, and balancing may be an issue for you, but you get a support stand for that. Speaking of the stand, the accessories may seem light to some, but he comes with the essentials: an angry face, a smirk face, 2 splaying hands, energy effects, and a support stand. He could have been packed with more faceplates, like him gritting his teeth or another smiling face, but factoring in the size, it's nearly perfect. Some absolutely hate Broly, and thought this figure was bad upon initial reveal. However, as one of the people who thought this figure would be a nightmare, it's one of the best action figures I have ever owned. Minor issues from mass production aside, this is absolutely one of, if not the, best releases of 2014. The aftermarket price set in pretty much at day one upon it entering the US, but even then, the slightly inflated prices at the time of this review are absolutely worth it. Do not miss out on this monster if you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z.